Hey guys, this is going to be my review of Resident Evil 7. This is the newest installment in the Resident Evil franchise. Right off the bat, I got to say, this game, it's going back to basics. It's going back to their horror roots, and it does it excellent. Um, this game is like a mix of like the first two, maybe three Resident Evil games, one, two, three, mixed with like Outlast and Amnesia. If you've played those games, it's all in first person, which is different from the other Resident Evil games. It was always either like a top down, like tank controls, and then there was the over the shoulder stuff. But this is all first person, and the tone is so much different than what we're used to seeing. Let's go ahead and talk about the story. The story, I'm not going to go into very much spoilers, but the story itself is very new and different. This doesn't really have the feel of, the same old thing of like Umbrella Corporation kind of thing. But it is still very interesting, and it still kind of fits within the world of Resident Evil. This game, it has like the same kind of feel of, like I said, the first original Resident Evils 1 and 2. But it plays a lot like or the story at least, plays a lot like what Resident Evil 4 was, where it's not really zombies as much as like a plague. There seems to be like a fungus that's controlling people and changing them, making them pretty much invincible. The characters, the main character you play as a character named Ethan, and he's pretty boring. I got to admit, he's very dull. Everything he does, or everything he says, really throughout the game, he has like little minor lines, and they're all pretty much the same, just boring, uninterested sounding tone to his voice. I know there's one scene or one part of the game really early on where you find someone that you've been looking for I believe it was like 3 years or something, and just the way he talks to her, it's like, oh yay, I found you, cool. There's no real excitement to him. It's like he's been desensitized way early on into this game. It's really weird. However, the family in this game, which are the main villains throughout the game, they are very interesting. It's very cool to see them do their thing. There's like about three or four different characters, and they all do something very different. They all have their own unique personalities, yet they're all equally terrifying. Each family member is their own individual boss, and they all have their own individual powers. They all seem to be a little differently. They have their own way of doing things. Very cool, very dynamic gameplay. They remind me a lot of the family from the Texas Chainsaw Massacre. So just imagine playing a first-person game with that kind of family, on top of the fact they have this crazy Resident Evil mutation powers. The tone is very dark, very gringy and dirty and creepy. It keeps this level of uneasiness throughout the game, and it seems to go deeper and deeper into that creepiness as the game goes on. I know when it first starts, you're just in this house, and then it kind of is like a weird, like, underground tunnels stuff, and it just gets more and more creepy and scary as you go on. And the fungus that's in this house, you can see it start to take over the house. It's very cool visuals. The environment, like I said, it's increasingly eerie, as well as music. Music adds a lot to the tone. It adds this threatening feeling as you play, which is very important to me personally. If you're playing a horror game, I don't want always loud crescendos, and at the same time, I don't want no music. I need the music to feel fluid with the game, and this game definitely does do that right. Save points, like regular Resident Evil games, the save points, finding ammo, all that's going to be very frustrating because you do need to conserve your ammo for these boss battles. They're not super easy to find, especially depending on what difficulty you play the game in. And save points, it does not really have much of an auto save feature, so you are going to have to find these save points save the game frequently, and you only get a certain amount of number of saves. So yes, you are going to have to overwrite. So if you do make mistakes, say you do use up a lot of ammo and you save the game, you can't go back unless you have a previous save before that, which just adds another level of frustration to it. The story, as I said, is very deep. It's a very interesting story. Um, Trying not to go into much detail, but you play this character Ethan. You're going to this house where your wife has been gone for, I believe it was 3 years. It might have been 5, but she's been gone for some time, and she was just believed to be dead. And you get a videotape of her contacting you, so you go to find her, uh, only to find out some crazy stuff's going on. She wasn't just kidnapped; she's been pretty much adopted into this crazy family. Um, the game, it's truly terrifying, you guys. It's not like the Resident Evil. I'd say it's even more scary than 4. 4 seemed to be the first one really to go more into that action as opposed to horror. There were a lot of horror elements in there. Don't get me wrong; it was a scary game. But 4 was like that. I believe that first turn. 5 and 6 to me were just completely horror. I mean, completely action games, and lost their touch with the horror element completely. This game goes back to its horror roots and does it in a way I've never seen a Resident Evil game do it before. There will be some jump scares, but the jump scares aren't what the whole game is based on. Like I said, the tone. You're going to come walk around a corner, you're just going to see something at a distance, and you know that's going to come and attack you, and that's what's scary about this game. Especially, like I said, trying to conserve the ammo. So knowing what you are going to want to kill and what you're wanting to just run away from, just get away from it. Um, these boss battles are so well designed. There's one boss battle where you're just trapped in this small area, and there's these bodies hanging from the ceiling, and you can use those bodies to push into your enemy and into the boss, push it into him and kind of knock him off balance so you can get a clean shot. It's very interesting gameplay. Another thing they brought back is, headshots are very important to get these headshots on. But because it's more of a first person game, it seems more, yes, there is that, first person shooter element to it, but it doesn't cling to that so much. Um, all in all, I got to say, this is probably one of the best Resident Evil games released. My favorite has always been Resident Evil 2. 4 was a close second, but this one right here seems to top all of those in scares and everything. Resident Evil 2, as much as it is scary, it is terrifying, it just doesn't hold up the way this game feels like it will. Um, Anybody can go into this game and just get scared. They do have a VR version, and I haven't really played a lot of that, but I have demoed it. The VR version is okay. It's fun. I don't think the game was. I feel like the developers didn't really develop the game to fit VR as much as they should have. For example, because it's a first-person game, the only thing you really see on yourself are your hands. So when in VR, you can actually look to the side and see that the arms are cut off, and you pretty much just essentially just floating hands. So that's it takes you out of the game. The graphics take a huge dip when it comes to VR. That's a big issue, considering that this game's horror element doesn't just rely on the jump scares, it does rely on the environments. And when the graphics aren't all there, it just kind of takes you out of there. I'm not the one to say graphics are everything, but for a game like Resident Evil that holds onto those environments and onto that tone, it can take you out of the game. And I say the best way I've seen this game being played, and I've played it personally, is actually on PC. Um, you can get it on PlayStation, as it plays very well PlayStation. However, PC, I believe, is the best place you're going to play this game. All in all, I'd say this game, like I said, probably the best in the series. I'd give it about an 8 out of 10. 8 because of the fact that your main character is just so uninteresting. When you go back and play the original games, Jill Valentine was pretty interesting. Claire was very interesting. Leon, of course, is a beloved character within the Resident Evil franchise for being as interesting of a character as he was. I don't see this character, Ethan, really fitting into all of that. I feel he's going to be very forgettable. However, the story itself will not be. The characters of Mama and Daddy and all these guys, they're so well done, so well written, so well performed, so well animated. Everything about them is so great. I enjoyed this game. Scared the hell out of me, you guys. If you want to play a real horror game, it's weird to say, but let's go back to Resident Evil. This series knows what they're doing, and they did it right. And it's a funny thing considering movie wise, they don't seem to know what they're doing at all. They really ruined themselves in the movies. So it's kind of funny that around the same time, Resident Evil released one of the worst movies that I've seen of late, and one of the best games I've played of late. So if you haven't checked it out, you guys, you need to check out Resident Evil 7. Like I said, preferably on PC. If not, PlayStation's a close second. So that's my review, 8 out of 10. Guys, you need to check it out.